I'm here to tell you some stories, actually, because that's what I do. But that's what you all do too, because stories are the most powerful way we have of organizing human experience. D.H. Lawrence said the stories tell us who we are and who we will become. And when William Faulkner accepted the Pulitzer Prize in 1954, he said the only stories worth a writer's blood and sweat and tears were stories of the human heart in conflict with itself. Willa Cather, who also won the Pulitzer, she says that the stories that engage us as adults are based on the experiences that we had before we turned 15. And I always like sort of thinking about that because I can still remember being 15. And she says that the emotions that drive those stories are passion and betrayal. And I would add two more, because I also think, remembering when I was 15, I was looking for acceptance. And the author of Passages to India, I think it's E.L. Forster, he said, give me in a story, and you'll have a reader for life. And so I think we look inside stories to try to find ourselves. And the other thing I think we do in stories at that time period of our life is that we're looking for forgiveness. We're looking for ways to understand, crazy things we did or mistakes we made, and if nothing else, sometimes we might read a book and close it and say, well, at least I was not as stupid as that character, and so we get some sort of a sense of, maybe we aren't so bad, maybe the world isn't so crazy, maybe I'm not so deranged or whatever that I might think about myself at various times. Just today, I read an article about, in the Wall Street Journal, about stories in science. And there was apparently a conference in Stanford that was called Stories in Science. And they were trying to take a look at why it is that we are always talking in stories. That when if you overhear somebody on the cell phone, they're telling you about something that just happened, there's like a villain and a hero, and you get all the details, and they were sort of looking at, why don't we just give people the facts of something? Why do we tell them this whole story, this structure? And so they asked some people to sit together and watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Remember that movie with Clint Eastwood? And then they had monitors on them to see sort of what the kind of brain patterns they had. And these people who didn't know each other but who were watching the same film had the same brain patterns. They went to the same places within their brain that sort of lit up the same sections of the brain. And so that director basically got inside their heads, and then they asked some people to tell a story, and they had the brain waves on that person who was, telling the story, and then they had the listener also hooked up. And sure enough, the same wavelengths went. It's sort of like Star Trek and the mind meld. Remember where they used to go together, and it was like, wow, we've been doing that our whole life. And they took the story that the woman told and just kind of changed the sentences around. He had the same sentences but didn't tell it as a story, and there was no connection. The brain waves didn't do anything. It was the story that really made the difference. And I mean, basically it's saying that stories change our brains. And when we connect with a story someone tells us, or we read that story, we can be changed forever. I mean, it can make us more empathic. It can make us, it can make us upset enough to do something, to act, to make some decisions. I mean, some of the world's social events have happened because somebody read something and they were so moved by that, they said, this can't go on, whether it's about injustice or whatever it might be. Between story and history lies memory. So our memories read like a story. So if if somebody says, well, what'd you do on Friday night? You might say, you went to the art walk, and you met some friends, and you went to this book signing, and you talked to you heard this woman, she was deceased, apparently, her name was Jean Kirkpatrick, and then you went home. So it had kind of a beginning and a middle and an end. But it can claim you like history. And so you might actually get into a discussion with someone who was with you and disagree about what went on. No, it wasn't Friday night because that was Good Friday, and people didn't have an event on Good Friday. Yeah, it was Good Friday, and no, I don't think it was. And then and they had snacks. No, they didn't have snacks. My stomach growled the whole time. I don't think they had snacks. And people get into arguing over little things like that. And I frequently tell this story about two sisters who did not talk to each other for 20 years. And then they got together, and one of them said, the reason I have not talked to you all this time is because at Aunt Mildred's funeral, you called my herald an idiot. And the second sister is like, aghast. And she goes, I wasn't at Aunt Mildred's funeral. We lived in Indiana then and couldn't come, remember? And besides, you weren't married to that idiot herald then anyway. She always almost makes it, And so why does that happen? Well, the reason it happens is because we don't remember the details. We remember the experience. We remember how it made us feel. And that's part of the reason why I encourage people to write their own stories. Because, and sometimes, and this happens a lot with men, and I would say especially with veterans, they'll say, well, I'd like to write my story, but I didn't journal, I didn't make notes, there are all these details I don't have. And I'd say, you know what, you can find out those details of, when that battle was had, or the day you got deployed. You don't need that. What you need is the only thing that you have that the rest of us don't have, which is your experience, how it touched you, how it changed your life. And I know that sisters and brothers get into this where somebody says, I wrote my family story or whatever, and the brother reads it and goes, oh, what family were you in? That never happened. Can't believe that family. Well, we're all born into different families. And so, even though we might have the same parents, depending on our birth order, we're in different families and we have different experiences. So that we are all writers. We are all storytellers. And that we can, in doing that, makes a difference in the lives of the people around us.